So this first one I'll be doing for category 1, software engineering and design. I'll be working on the CS-330 computational graphics and visualization project. For this one, like I said, I'll be adding more details and complexity to that 3D scene that I created. I didn't feel like I had enough time to capture the image I had in mind for this project. So I want to go back and kind of add more details to it to make it look how I imagined it in my head when I was actually doing it. So yeah, let's see here. So just for context, this scene manager.cpp file is the only one that I edited for the project. The rest of these were like pre-made. They were given to us by the professor. So I'm not going to focus on those because I didn't create those. So the only thing I'm going to look at is basically the bottom half of this file. So I'm just going to go through and like point out, where I think improvements could be made, some of the weaknesses, and then I'll go ahead and show you the scene as well so you can see what I'm talking about and kind of what I want to add for that. So let's see here, starting up here with the lighting. So for this, you can see there is quite a few comments up here, but I think they could be improved still. Like specifically for these, you can see I kind of just put light 0, light 1, light 2, and didn't really go in depth or in detail about what each light did, what it was supposed to represent, how it worked. I think I could have been a lot more detailed with that. So definitely going to add more comments to this, kind of try to annotate it better, kind of just explain what each one does, explain what the purpose of it is in the scene. So whoever looks at this, has a better idea of what they're looking at. And then if we go down for this, like I said, these are pretty well commented, nothing crazy here. And then we get to the actual scene rendering at the bottom. These are also pretty well commented, and I would say it's pretty organized as well. So nothing really to point out here. I could have probably commented some more for the texture and the materials, just explaining like what type of texture it was, what type of material it was. I could have done better on that, so I'll probably add some comments there. Maybe try to organize this a little better too. Yeah, you can see these are all basically the same. I've got, the title of each mesh object, kind of explain what it is, what it does. So these are pretty good. See, it's all kind of the same there. But yeah, I can go ahead and show you the scene now so you can get an idea of what I want to do for it. Okay, so for this you can see this is basically like a desktop. You can see I've got the piece of paper, the coffee mug, the pencil, the eraser. And it's not bad. Like, you can see kind of the reflections off of everything, like especially the pencil and the coffee mug. You can see the reflections in the lights. It's not bad. And the textures I think were pretty good. You can see up close, they're still pretty clear. I think I did a good job on that. Just the textures and the UV scales for everything. You can see they all look pretty detailed. But my biggest complaint with how it is now is the lighting. I feel like the lighting could be better. I think it could be more realistic. There's not really like any shadows going on, which I think is, it doesn't make it look as realistic as it could be. So I need to add more shadows. You can see it's got like the ambient light everywhere, and it's got that one diffuse light in the corner over there. But other than that, like no shadows, no natural light from anything. So it's just kind of flat and boring looking. So my main thing with this one is improving the lighting. And then also another thing I want to do for this is just add more objects to the scene in general. So my plan is to hopefully make this like a full office room or office space, I guess you could say. So I've got the desk right here. I'll probably add some legs to the desk and then add some walls surrounding it, add a floor and a ceiling to make this an actual room. And then obviously I have to do the lighting for those, have to do the textures, the materials, get them set up right. Like I said, this is just going to add to the realism of the project, just give it more life. But yeah, that's my plan for this. Just add more details, improve the lighting, make it as realistic as I possibly can. So that's what I plan to do for that. And then if we go back to the document, yeah, like I said, improve the lighting system and complexity of the scene, and then also organize the code a little bit better, add some more comments. And then with this one, the skills that I felt like I would demonstrate throughout this enhancement would be creative thinking, attention to detail, and organization. So I feel like creative thinking, that one's pretty obvious. You know, it's a 3D scene. So I'm gonna have to kind of figure out a way to make it realistic and add the objects and lighting in a way that makes it feel alive. So I feel like creative thinking has a lot to do with that. And then of course, attention to detail. You know, when it comes to like the textures and the lighting, you have to be pretty specific on how it looks. So I think attention to detail has a lot to do with that. You know, I mean, you can get, with these 3D scenes, you can get pretty advanced, especially if you like zoom in on things. You can see it's kind of blurry the more you zoom in. So I need to make sure I figure out those UV skills right to make them look good, even if you zoom in up close on them. So like I said, attention to detail, making sure everything's just as realistic as possible. And then also organization. This goes back to, you know, adding comments to the code, kind of moving the code around to make sure everything's where it needs to be. You know, it needs to be formatted in a way that makes sense to someone that's never looked at the code before, so that they can understand it. And then also in terms of course outcomes that I think it aligns with, I think it aligns with 2 and 4. So you can see 2 is design, develop, and deliver professional quality oral, written, and visual communications that are coherent, technically sound, and appropriately adapted to specific audiences and contexts. So like I said, with this one, I'll be adding some comments, organizing it a little bit better so that, like I said, people that have never seen it before can kind of understand it better. Kind of understand what each part does, what it represents within the scene, so that they can kind of understand the context better, understand what each part does. So that's how it aligns with this one. And then also number 4, demonstrate an ability to use well-founded and innovative techniques, skills, and tools and computing practices for the purpose of implementing computer solutions that deliver value and accomplish industry-specific goals. So for this one, using, you know, the techniques and skills that I learned in that CS-330 class, you know, applying those techniques and skills towards improving the scene. You know, this was the first experience I had with like 3D design and 3D visualizations. You know, so I had to learn a lot just to even do this much. Took a lot of time and effort and research and practice. You know, so I need to continue applying those skills that I learned to improve the scene even more and make it more realistic. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it with that. I didn't really go over the actual code review checklist too much. Like I said, most of this is going to be documentation. There's not much I can really do as far as structure goes. Everything's structured, I think, like it needs to be. The rest of these, you know, there's no loops or branches, and most of this programming stuff doesn't matter down here. Mainly documentation, making sure everything's commented and annotated correctly, making sure everything's structured like it should be, and just making it easier for, like I said, someone who's never looked at it before can understand everything and understand why everything's where it is. Yeah, I think that's it for this one, and for the next one we'll go on to category 2. Alright, so now for my second artifact, which is related to the algorithms and data structures category. I'll be working on my CS-360 mobile inventory tracking app, and for the enhancement I'll be adding some more features to it and also improving its overall security. And to do that, I plan to add a search bar, low quantity alerts, and role-based access control. So obviously the search bar, you know, that has to do with algorithms and data structures because, well, for one, you have to have a search algorithm set up, to search for specific letters and the word within, whatever you search up. And also it has to go into the database and try to match whatever you put into that search bar to what we have in the database. Right. Also low quantity alerts, that has to do with database stuff too, because the app has to go into the database and then see, which items are below like a certain threshold, whatever that number may be, and then, send an alert to your app telling you that, you're low on that item. And then lastly, role-based access control. That's for security purposes. When I created this app, I didn't even think to put different roles in it, which I should have, because if this is being used by businesses, then obviously there would be different roles. You got managers, owners even, and then you have your regular employees, and they would need different permissions and different levels of access to stuff. So I probably should have included this when I first made this, but I didn't think about it at the time. So for that reason, I want to try to do it now because I think it would, improve the app by a lot. It would make it usable at least by businesses because that's pretty much a requirement for a lot of inventory tracking apps. So yeah, that's what I want to do for it. Now let me go ahead and show off the code a little bit. I'll show the app in a second. So let me just show the code for now. So this has a lot of different pages in it. Obviously, it being an app, I need a different page for everything. So you can see there's a bunch of them. Let's see. So I'll just take like this one for example. So you can see off the bat, everything's pretty organized. I feel like I did a good job with the formatting of all the files. Like everything's in order. Everything's indented properly. And everything's kind of where I feel like it should go. Nothing looks like too complicated. Nothing's too messy or unorganized. Everything's pretty straightforward. Once again, like I mentioned with the first artifacts, I could always use more comments just explaining stuff. I mean, I guess you can never have enough comments because some of this stuff, it can be difficult to figure out, especially if, for an audience that's never seen it before. It could definitely be difficult to understand. So definitely want to add some more comments just explaining what each piece does and how it connects, because I mean most of these pages connects to other pages, so you kind of have to understand how they connect to each other and how they work together to run the app. So for that, definitely need some more comments explaining all of that. Well, like I said, most of this is pretty organized. Most of the functions themselves look to be set up properly, like how they should be. So I don't think any like crazy super overhaul needs to be done for the code itself. I think everything's pretty well done, mainly because of the feedback that I got from my professor in this class. She was very helpful in pointing out where I could improve in certain parts of the code. So she kind of helped me make it look as good as it does now, but could still improve it a little bit for sure. So that's what I'm going to be doing. And then of course the features that I'll be adding will help a lot into making this a more professional grade app that businesses could actually use. So let me see if I can pull up the app itself so I can show you. Yeah, so when you first open the app, you gotta log in, and of course it gives you a place to sign up for an account if you don't have one. So I just made one, so let me just sign in. Hold on, let's see. What was it? Okay, there we go. Yeah. So once you sign in, it takes you to the main inventory screen. Right now, I just have one item in here, it's the pencil, and then I've got a quantity of 10 for this one. And for this, it's pretty simple. It's a simple app. You know, you just add item, put a name in there, like, oh no, I put an eraser in there, just say pink eraser. And let's say we got 20 of these, and then just add item, and then it adds it to the screen right there. And of course, this is working through the, I believe it's the SQLite database within Android Studio. This being an Android app. So it's working through that, and it's adding this to the database so that this is stored in the database. So this is how I would use the low quantity alerts after this number got, you know, below a certain point. You know, it'd send you a notification, hey, this is getting low, you might want to restock it or remove it, you know, whatever it may be. And then of course you have the ability to just remove these entirely if you want, and it'll ask you, you know, to confirm that, do you want to delete this item, yes or no. But yeah, so this is where the low quantity alerts are going to work out of, this quantity value right here. And then as far as the search bar to search for items, obviously you need a lot of items to make that even something you need. But you know, for businesses that have a lot of items, I mean, this could have hundreds, even thousands of items in it. So you'd eventually need some way to filter that and find specific items other than just scrolling through for 5 minutes straight trying to find something. So I'll probably put a search bar like somewhere up at the top right here. I'll probably move the items down to like right here maybe, and then put the search bar at the top. I think that would be a good way to do it. Or maybe include a button somewhere on the screen, kind of like this one. Just call it like search, and then when you click on it, it'll let you search for whatever item you want to look at. So I think that's how I could do that. And then as far as the role-based access control, I'll have to, I already have, let me look real quick. Let's see, database helper. So I already have the users table. I'll probably just include another column in here which states what role that account is. So I guess I probably have like member, I'll probably just do two for now, like member and administrator, or like employee and administrator, whatever it may be. And of course they'll have different permissions. So the administrator, it'll let you do pretty much everything. You can change the quantity, delete items, add items, and then also like maybe even delete users, or promote users to administrators. You know, promote like a regular user to administrator. I think that'd be a good thing to include in there. But that's how I do that. Just add another column in here, and then of course, you know, some features won't be available to normal users, and they would only be available to administrators. So then I have to figure out how to do that within the code. But yeah, that's how I would do that. That's my plan for this one. Like I said, the search bar up at the top here to search for items if you have a lot of items. I think that'd be really helpful. The low quantity alerts, obviously give a notification when you're running super low on some items, just so you're aware of it, so you can restock that or delete it if you need to. And then the role-based access control, like I just mentioned, that'd be good for security purposes, because you don't want just everybody having access to all of this stuff, because then they could go in there and delete stuff that you don't want deleted, and it creates a big mess. So I think that'd be great for security purposes. Now if we go down to the document here, let's see. Yeah, so the skills that I think I'd be demonstrating with this enhancement would be advanced problem solving and secure design. Obviously problem solving, like I said, especially with the role-based access control, this was something I should have done when I created the app, but I didn't think of it at the time. You know, like I said, you don't want just everybody having access to adding, deleting items, and you know, you want to be able to limit who can do all of those things. So having that access control and permissions settings, I think that'd be great for that. So obviously that's problem solving in a way. You know, you're finding a solution to an issue, and improving the user experience because of it. And also secure design. That pretty much goes back to the access control too. Like I said, you don't want just anybody having access to add, delete items, do whatever they want within the app. You want certain permissions for certain people. So having some features off limits for some people would be a good thing in a business setting. So obviously that does relate to secure design as well. And then for the course outcomes that this aligns with, I said 3, 4, and 5. So for number 3, like I mentioned just a second ago, advanced problem solving skills for finding a solution. Like I said, there was an issue. Like I said, I should have included the access control at the beginning, and I didn't. So right now, that has become an issue that I could see with potential employers. So I had to figure out a way to solve that, and for that, I chose to implement the role-based access control so that you can change those permissions when you need to, and only give access to those who need it. And then aligns with number 4, because I'll be using innovative techniques and skills to implement modern features for improving user experience. Once again, obviously the search bar is kind of like a quality of life thing, if you want to call it that. It just makes everything easier for the user. Like I said, if they have hundreds or even thousands of items in there, it'll allow them to search for specific ones, which will make it way easier than actually just having to scroll through that page for however long it might take. And then, like I mentioned with the class before, this is my first time doing an app, so I had to learn skills and kind of learn how they worked. So with those skills that I learned, I'll continue implementing more features into the app and just making it better overall. And then with number 5, like I've said a few times, the access control improves the security. Goes back to the skills that I mentioned earlier, the secure design, only giving access to those who need it, which I think will be a really good thing. So with that said, I believe that's it for that one. And now we'll go on to the third artifact. Alright, now for the final enhancement I'll be doing for the capstone project. This one's going to be for my CS-340 dashboard project. For this one, just going to improve the database functions and the UI of the dashboard page, specifically to include more filtering options for the dashboard, as well as additional search functionality. And for this, I'm talking about like a search bar, so you could search for the records by name. And yeah, this one's for a rescue animal agency, so it's going to include a bunch of records which are of these rescue animals. So you'll have dogs of different breeds, different sex, different different ages, just dogs of all different kinds basically. So for this, like, filtering options and search options are a big part of this and making the dashboard work for its intended use, intended purpose. So for this one, like I said, implement additional filtering options, as well as that search bar, so you can search for dogs by name, if you have a specific one in mind. Like I said earlier, filtering options I want to include, age, sex, and breed of dogs. Yeah, and then as far as the code itself, I'll mainly be talking about this file right here, just the dashboard file. I don't actually have the database set up for this yet. It will be in MongoDB, but I don't actually have it set up as of right now. I did have it set up when I was taking the class, but I don't have access to that database anymore because it was in one of the resources that we used for the class specifically, and I don't have access to that anymore. So I need to set up another database identical to the one we had before in order to get this to work. But I do have I have an example of some records that I kind of just inserted in here just so you can see how the dashboard works and what it's supposed to do. Yeah, so for this one, you can see not a lot of comments explaining what this does, and also I feel like the code in here is kind of just unorganized a little bit. It's kind of messy. Yeah, I don't think it's organized very well, formatted very well. I think it could be much more professional looking. I think the format could be a lot better for this. And once again, adding more comments so that everything's explained and so that the audience understands what they're looking at with this. I have the other one right here. This one's for the actual database itself. This is for the CRUD operations, so create, read, update, and delete. This handles all those within the database and connects it to the dashboard. Like I said, I will be using a file like this for the final project, for the final enhancement, but I don't have it set up right now just because I don't have access to that database anymore. So I'll have to create a new one and kind of set this up with it. But yeah, this is just basic CRUD operations, create, read, update, delete. It's going to do all those functions within the database. So, this will all be set up for the final enhancement, but right now it's not set up yet. But same thing applies, could be, I think it's organized pretty well for this, pretty basic file. Like I said, maybe some more comments just explaining some of these, what exactly it's doing. But nothing crazy right here. But yeah, like I said, this file specifically is pretty unorganized. So definitely want to organize this a little bit better, format it better, annotate it better, make it look more professional basically. And then I can actually show you the dashboard itself, just what it looks like with the mock data that I have set up with it right now. So this is it. This is the CS-340 dashboard. Here's the logo for the company that we've used for that project. You can see the dashboard doesn't look bad right now. It's pretty basic, but it's got a few cool features to it. So you can see it already has a few filtering options for the different type of rescues you might want to be doing. So you've got like water rescue, mountain or wilderness rescue. And you can see this will update as you change which filtering option you want to use. And then reset will just show you all of them. So you can go through. I have 100 records in there right now, so you can see all those. You can see all the information for these dogs, their name, breed, sex, age, and then also their location, which is cool. And you can see I've got the map set up right here. You can actually see each individual dog's location. Once again, this is mock data, so some of this just doesn't make any sense. Like being in the water right here doesn't make any sense. So once I have it set up in the database, it should, get those locations in the correct spots. Another thing is the little pie chart here. You can kind of see like the percentage of the different breeds for whatever filtering option you have set up. So you can see it'll change as well. It'll update when I choose different filtering options. Of course, it'll tell you which ones apply to that type of rescue. You can see which breeds will be used for those, and then it tells you, the percentage of each one, which is pretty cool. So yeah, what I want to do for this, like I mentioned, I want to add more filtering options, by breed, sex, and age, so you can do more specific searches depending on like specific type of rescues the user might want to do, and also a search bar to search by name, because you might have a certain dog that you want to use for a certain type of rescue, and you just want to search him up specifically and get his information. Then you can do that, which I think will be really cool. But yeah, this is what the dashboard looks like. Pretty basic. Like I said, just want to improve the look of this a little more, add more options, for searches. And of course, I'll need to add the database functionality to support the new filtering options and search options I want to include in this. So probably have to update this other file a little bit to support that. But yeah, that's pretty much what I want to do with this one. If we go back to the document, got a little flow chart here. Like I said, add search bar for better record lookup capabilities, add the additional filtering options, and then implement the database functionality to support the new options. And this one, as far as skills, I think it'll demonstrate my ability to improve the user experience, better visualize data, and optimize query performance. So like I mentioned, improving the user experience, giving them more filtering options, and also allowing them to search for individual dogs by name. I think that'll improve the user experience, because people who are using this are going to be looking for specific, types of dogs for their specific type of rescue they need to do. But giving them those additional filtering and search options will allow them to find, allow them to easier find the dogs that they're looking for their specific purpose. So all these will kind of make it easier for them to do that. And then also better visualizing data. Like I said, I got the map here and the pie chart. So, the additional filtering and search options allow them to kind of see the data better. It'll be more specific, at least, as far as like what they're looking for, which I think, that goes back to improving the user experience, visualizing the data better. So you're not just having to look at the records and the information itself. You can see it visually, which I think will help. So I think that'll be nice for the user as well. And also optimizing query performance. This has to do with the database functions. I'm gonna have to make sure this is optimized correctly. I'll have to make sure that the database is quick and efficient when it comes to these filtering options, and also the search lookup. I'll have to make sure that's optimized, so that it can do it relatively quickly and efficient, because you don't want the user waiting a long time to search for individual, specific types of dogs. You want it to be quick. So I'll either make sure this file is organized, make sure the database is set up correctly for those specific queries. But yeah, those are the skills I think I'll be demonstrating with that. And then lastly, the course outcomes I think this will align with. Let's see, number 3 and 4. So it aligns with number 3 because it improves my ability to design and evaluate solutions, as well as optimizing, algorithmic design to improve database functionality. So if we go back up here, I want to look and see what that actually says. So number 3. So design and evaluate computing solutions to solve a given problem using algorithmic principles, computer science practices, and standards appropriate to its solution while managing the trade-offs involved in design choices. So yeah, designing and evaluating these solutions, which would be, these search and filtering options to solve a given problem. That problem being, you might not be able to find the specific type of dog you're looking for the type of rescue you want to do. And so giving them those extra options will kind of help solve that problem and give them a solution to that so that they can find more specific types of dogs for the purpose that they're looking for. Obviously, improving the algorithmic principles, improving those algorithms within the code. Like I said, optimizing the query performance, making sure, the algorithms are set up correctly for this to make sure it's efficient and functional to what the purpose is. And then of course with this, making sure everything's set up correctly with this, making sure I don't have any errors or, bugs popping up on the dashboard. I want to make sure, the performance is efficient within the dashboard too, making sure it loads quickly, making sure, when you click these different options that it's not taking forever to load. It's got to be good when it comes to performance. And then also I believe number 4 was the other one. As far as number 4 goes, demonstrating ability to use well-founded and innovative techniques, skills, and tools and computing practices for the purpose of implementing computer solutions that deliver value and accomplish industry-specific goals. I mentioned this one with a different artifact. I think the first one, using the skills and techniques that I developed throughout that class and applying it towards improving the artifact in a way that can solve problems and create solutions. Like I mentioned before, if you want to search for a more specific type of dog for your purpose, then you can do that with these options that I'll be adding and that I'll be enhancing the project with. The additional search bar and filtering options that'll help you find more specific dogs for what you're looking for. So, hopefully that's going to solve a problem that a user might be having. Hopefully that delivers a value and improves the user experience overall. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it as far as this goes. Alright, so with that said, that's going to be the end of my code review. I know it went a little longer than 30 minutes, and I apologize for that. But hopefully that covered everything that it needed to cover, and hopefully you now have a better understanding of what my code does and what I'm trying to do with the enhancements and what I'm trying to achieve with them. But yeah, with that said, that's it for me. Thanks.